Welcome back. Can you believe it, Bob? It's our final our wrap up of the legislature. It's funny because it feels like the legislature gets started. It feels like it's never going to end, and then when it gets near the end, then it really feels like it's never going to
and
end.
and
And
then it's over.
and then it's over. And this is one of the ones where it looked like a lot of the time it looked like it might be going to overtime,
Yep.
but they seem to have worked out their differences and.
Yep. It
Uh,
was amazing, Dave.
Yeah, I didn't mention, but I think the screen has probably mentioned that I'm Dave and this is Bob. Why don't you tell us the thing that was really threatening to send it to overtime, of course, was the budget,
Was the budget?
which they finally came to agreement on. Why don't
Yep.
you kind of mention
Well,
that?
that was always the sort of Damocles hanging over their head. We didn't know if there was going to be a budget or not. As we talked a couple of weeks ago, there was a $1.1 billion difference in this House and Senate budget. They
It looked ugly.
appointed the conference committee, and the first conference committee spent 4 or 5 days, didn't really get anywhere, and the Senate president reappointed. So they appointed a second committee, and the second conference committee turned the budget around in about 24 hours, and essentially they're still working through the numbers, but essentially split the difference more or less. Uh, between the House and the Senate. And just about an hour ago, the Senate passed the budget. The House passed it this morning with 41 votes, which was kind of surprising. It got that many votes.
And when Bob says an hour ago and this morning, we're coming to you late afternoon on Friday.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you probably won't see this video until next week,
Right.
but
So
we're talking to you on Friday.
So yeah, just about 2:15 on Friday afternoon, the Senate passed the budget 1714. So they're going to send the budget to the governor, and I assume he'll sign it. But it's a great relief. There was a lot of speculation this was going to go to a special session, and the fact that we got it done is, I think, remarkable tribute to the Senate president and to the leadership of the House and the Senate. So.
Agreed.
So we do have a budget.
Agreed. They were a long way apart, not that long ago.
Yep. Yep.
Well, of course, the big ticket item, other than the budget, that took so much oxygen out of the room this session was the tax bills.
Tax bills, right? Yeah. So, as we discussed, I think last week or a couple of weeks ago, we started the session with 21 tax bills, and at the end of the day, there were 4 left standing. Quickly run through those. The 4 that made it to the finish line were House Bill 3, the property tax exemption for long-term homeowners. That provides a 50% tax exemption for folks that are 65 years or older and have lived in their house and been Wyoming residents for 25 years. The second one is property tax refund program. That's a program that allows a refund on your property taxes if you're income qualified. So this is an expansion of an existing program. The old one took it to 125% of the county median income. This takes it to 165. House Bill 45, the property tax exemption, limits the assessed value to essentially 4%. So your assessed value can only grow 4% a year.
And that was also a compromise.
That was also a compromise.
It started at 5. At one point, it was at 3.
And then the
landed at 4.
Conference committee, they split the difference. And then the last tax bill is a homeowner exemption tax. It provides the tax exemption, and I'm a little unclear on this one, Dave, because the committee was going back and forth. It's either a fixed amount of 200 grand or a percent of the property value. And the debate was obviously up in the northwest part of the state. A normal house is $2 million, and so I think they ended at the percentage. It's a 2-year program.
Just to be clear, there's no such thing as a normal house up there.
Okay, all right. But that does, the good news for the cities and towns, that does have a backfill provision
And we like that.
and as does the tax refund program as well.
The
So
tax refund program really just puts more state money into that program.
right.
And
Yeah.
like you say, the last one you mentioned, the exemption, just we get backfilled in that one.
Yeah.
Really, the only one that has potential for much impact on us is the cap.
Right.
So in those counties where
It's growing
faster than that.
Yeah.
But all told, some of the proposals would have done legitimate damage to us.
Right.
In the end, not so bad.
Right. I think we did okay.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the help that we got from the County Commissioners Association on that.
Agreed.
But yeah, it actually came out, I think, pretty well. I think
they mostly really did aim at the problem.
Yeah.
Some of the proposals were really scattershot.
Right.
In the end, I
Right.
think they really aimed at the problem.
Targeted relief was the word you heard in the halls of,
Yes.
of the House and the Senate.
And I think they did that.
So
speaking of money, unless you had anything
Nope.
else to say about that.
Nope.
Speaking of money, one of our primary bills was Senate File 90, which was sponsored by Senator Guru.
Right.
And was an outgrowth of Amendment A, which the voters approved in 2022
Right.
by 57%, as I recall.
I believe so.
And just as a reminder for any of those who need a reminder, so that authorized cities to invest in equities just like the state does, except that it required follow-up legislation.
Right.
So this is really the first of at least two steps with that follow-up legislation. Senate
Right.
File 90 did pass. It got dramatic at the end.
A tortured path.
It did.
Tortured path.
Yeah, it got dramatic at the end. It started out getting nearly unanimous votes. At the end, the final vote we needed, which was for the Senate to concur with the House changes, we got that by one vote in the end.
Yep.
And big shout out to our members that helped get in touch with their legislators to.
Right.
Especially on that last vote, their senators to get that vote done. And like I say, it was high drama. It was this morning, the last day of the session, by one vote, but we did get Senate File 90, which authorizes the state treasurer, to set up a third fund for local governments, which will be a longer term, more aggressive, higher yielding plan.
Right.
And so now it's in the hands of the treasurer. He'll set the rules up. It'll probably be it'll be some months before the rules are finalized, but once he has that, our folks will be able to send their money there. The second step, which you're going to mention later, but the second step is that there'll be an interim topic where we can discuss
more options,
private options for those investments.
Yeah.
And so we requested that. The WCCA also requested that. The Capital Finance Committee has put their stamp of approval on it and sent it to the Management Council. Of course, the final word on what becomes an interim topic is up to the Management Council.
And that meeting has not been scheduled yet.
That's right. And so that looks promising.
Yep.
That's the intent. But one more step on that.
Right.
Yet another bill that kind of took a lot of your
took a
energy.
Lot of time. Senate File 114 was the building official reciprocity, contractor licensing reciprocity bill. We talked about this previously. Came out of the governor's office. We worked with the governor's staff and the building officials around the state and got it in pretty good shape. That went through pretty smooth without really any hiccups at all. So now a contractor can take a test in Cody, and as long as he meets the insurance requirements and pays the fees, he doesn't have to take a test in Casper, Laramie, or any other city that has contractor licensing.
Yes.
If you're a town that doesn't have contractor licensing, then this bill doesn't apply to you. But that one went through really smooth.
And again, like we mentioned last week, we didn't love it in the first version, but we were able to work and get it to one that we did like. And again, big shout out to the building officials across our city building officials across the state, and some of our elected officials that helped get that helped us get that in order. And of course, Bob, you spent a lot of energy on that, so congratulations to you on that. One that didn't go the way we'd hoped, it was the gun-free zone bill, which which normally we don't have a position on guns, as Bob likes to say. Go ahead, Bob.
We're
Say
not
it.
for guns. We're not against guns. We're for local control.
That's right.
It's a preemption of local authority.
And do your second step.
We're Switzerland when it comes to guns.
Yeah.
So,
If you want to say you can't have them in your council meeting, you should be able to say that. If you want to say you can't come in here without a gun, you ought to be able to.
That should be the council's choice as well.
That's correct. So,
but the bill did pass.
Yeah, and we were opposed to it.
Yeah.
Not because we have a position on guns, but because we got a pretty firm position on local control. And in this case, that was an issue that was decided locally that they now have decided that they're going to mandate from the state. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion at our board meeting and our region meetings and how that's going to be implemented. But that's one that didn't go our way.
Right.
Some of the retirement stuff.
So we had 3 retirement bills, as we discussed previously. The big plan is going to increase by 1%, 0.5% each year, and then the law enforcement plan is going to increase 1.8% over the next 3 years. It's necessary to keep those plans, fiduciary solvent or actuarially solvent.
Yes.
And it's a responsible thing to do. We all remember about Amendment A when it was underfunded, Fire Fund A.
Fire Fund A, yep.
Fire Fund A when it was underfunded, and the delay in dealing with that cost about $50-60 million.
And who's going to bear that increase, Bob?
Well, it's up to the local governments. They can put half on the employee and half pick up the other half, or if they choose to, the employer can pick it all up. So the thing you can't do is you can't put it all on the employee.
Yeah, so the employer has to bear at least half. But can opt to bear more.
Bear more. That's correct.
Okay.
Then the third retirement bill, which actually surprised me that it passed, was where the Wyoming retirement system is going to be making the decisions about how much contributions have to go up.
They've essentially delegated that to the staff.
That authority to WRS, which I think is a smart thing, because it'll keep it current, and the increases won't have to be so big.
And it passed surprisingly easy.
Very without a lot of discussion. So.
Yeah. ARPA, of course, is still those funds are still around, and that was a big deal that we were working on. At the end of the day, they did act to make sure we weren't going to lose the ARPA funds back to the federal government. We're still kind of sorting out how those are going to be prioritized, but the bottom line on the ARPA funds is that they'll be reallocated to the executive branch, and then distributed through SLIB.
Through SLIB, that's correct.
So our members are very familiar with those processes, so that should work. The big news on the money, of course, and we've mentioned this previously, but worth to mention again as we wrap up, is that on direct distribution, we got $146.25 million in direct distribution this year. Again, the governor had recommended 110. The interim committee had recommended 105. Through the help of some of our friends, that I don't know if we should name all of them in this video, but through the help of some of our friends in the respective houses, we were able to get that up to 146.25 million, and that will be distributed on the the Madden formula, correct?
I believe so.
I think that's all on the Madden formula, as opposed to last time, which had a couple of different formulas in play.
Right.
So what you're kind of mostly used to, the Madden formula, is how that'll be distributed. So that kind of brings us, and those are just the big ticket items. We were working, about 60 bills?
60 bills we were watching.
And so that's just kind of a high level of some of the most important ones to us. I guess the next question is, what comes next, Bob?
Well, we're going to take the weekend off, Dave. But we're going to be talking interim topics.
Well, our wives might have something to say about that.
We're talking about the interim topics, and you talked earlier about sort of the second phase of the equity investing program. Basically, give our members more options. If they don't want to invest with the state treasurer, what other options are they going to have? So that if management council agrees, which I believe they will. We'll be working with the counties and some of the financial folks to try to provide some options on that. The other thing that we'll be talking about is the abandoned buildings bill. This is a bill that's been run up the flagpole twice, and we think it's a really good bill. So we're going to really put the shoulder to that one next year.
I think
Try to get that one over the top.
The problem with that one this time was, of course, the 2/3 required to introduce it,
and it almost got 40 votes.
It almost got the 2/3.
It almost got the 2/3 that it needed. So we think we can, assuming that Representative Sherwood wants to bring that forward again,
and she says she plans to.
So we'll be working that one. Now, regulatory reduction is sort of interesting. There was a bill to extend the life of the Regulatory Reduction Task Force,
which is somewhat erroneously named, by the way.
Yeah. But that bill died, and
Yes.
it had funds to basically pay for the expenses of the committee. So I don't believe that we're going to do regulatory reduction unless Management Council brings it back without the consent of the legislature. And that was the big fight at Management Council a couple of months ago. Who has the authority to do that, the Management Council or the legislature? So
we'll see. We're going to have to wait till Management Council needs to find out if we're going down that road again.
Right. But I would say we had a pretty successful session.
I think we did. Interestingly, in the report we just gave, we only talked about one thing that really didn't go our way, and a couple of pretty significant things. It was really, again, high drama with our bill on the local government investing, the follow up to M&A.
Right.
High drama on that, but it feels good to, after working so hard on M&A, it feels really good to get this next step taken care of.
I know.
And look forward to working that in the interim to get even more options for our folks.
Right.
Bob, pleasure. I hope
Likewise.
Everybody has enjoyed this different way that we've done the weekly report this time. But again, I appreciate all the work you do, Bob, and Justin and Erla. Justin's behind the camera right now. For those of you who don't know, this is a Justin Schilling production. But we really appreciate the support we get from our members. We absolutely have seen, not just assumed, but we've actually been able to see where you talking to your own legislators has pushed us over the hill a couple of different times.
Without that, we wouldn't have direct distribution at 146, and we wouldn't have gotten the vote on Senate File 90. No, absolutely no
That's
question
correct.
about that.
No question about it. Our members came through for us on that. So thank you. And we'll be seeing you soon at the region meetings.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Bob.